One of the coolest stories that I have heard of coming out of World War II was this story about this lady named Corrie ten Boom. You may have never heard of this lady before, but arguably I think she's probably one of the strongest women who did one of the most bravest things that you could have done in this scenario. You know, when the Nazis and the Jews, they were having their spat, and the Nazis were literally going after the Jews and putting them in concentration camps, Corrie ten Boom literally opened up her home, made this interesting opening where it was like this back door where the Jews could go in and they could hide. She even went as far as to get like these food rations because all the food was rationed, and she would feed the Jews as well. Well, this went on for a little while until she got caught. So she actually got caught, and some of the Nazis found her and what she was doing, and so she was actually taken into solitary confinement for 3 months. And I don't know if you've heard anything about solitary confinement, but it can drive people literally insane to not be around someone else, to have nothing going on, to have no one to talk to for 3 months long. Corrie ten Boom sat in solitary confinement for doing what she felt like God was calling her to do in the midst of one of the greatest oppositions that the Jews had ever faced. Well, she finally got out of solitary confinement, and her sister had this conversation. Her sister's name was Betsy, and she decided that after all of this, she really needed some time to heal. So she was gonna go off and find just some spot for healing. Right before she went off for this spot, which I can only imagine what she would actually have to heal from, both Betsy and Corrie, the things that they saw, the things they experienced, the opposition that they had to face was so strong it could have cost them their life. So right before Betsy went off to find her healing, Corrie said this to her, and I think it was a reminder and encouragement. She said, "There is no pit so deep that God isn't deeper still." Now today we're going to talk about another story of opposition in the Bible where Daniel actually faced a similar situation where what he was doing was going to cost him his life. But we're also going to see how just like God did something miraculous and awesome in Corrie's story, God's going to do something miraculous in Daniel's story. And I hope that between those two parallels of those stories that we can believe that opposition is just a breeding ground for miracles. There's a story in Daniel 6 where Daniel he's a part of this kingdom, and he's actually elected one of the officials, which is an insane honor. Not just anyone gets elected as an official, and he slowly but surely, and also really kind of quickly, he worked his way up to the top. Like everything he did, he was good at. Everything he did, he succeeded. He was kind of one of those guys that you hate because he's good at everything, and you're over here and it takes you like 5 times as long to learn it. He just excelled at it immediately. So the other officials in the kingdom, they did not like this. I don't know what the emotions was around it, but they just didn't like Daniel. And so they knew that they couldn't find fault in him because he was faithful, he was respectful, he was so good at what he did, that they knew the only thing they could find fault with was actually his religion. So what they did was they went behind Daniel's back right to the king. And they went up to the king and they said, "Hey, King Darius, we need you to sign a law into effect. Here's what we want you to do. If you catch anyone in the next 30 days who would pray to anybody or anything outside of you, King Darius, they should be thrown into the lion's den." So King Darius thought, all right, that's cool, let's do it. So they signed it into effect, and once a law goes into effect, it's done. Even the king can't reverse it. So Daniel heard about this, and he really was bothered about it. So he went to God and he prayed 3 times a day. He opened his window to where it was looking out to Jerusalem, and he would pray and ask for God's help. He knew that he needed wisdom to be able to get through this because his faith was hinged on him praying to God. He couldn't pray to King Darius. That would disrespect God. Well, one day the officials saw him doing it. They caught him red-handed. He was bowing down, he was praying to God, and he was asking for God to help. So they went back to the king, like the younger sibling who always tells on you when you do something that you shouldn't do. And they tell him, hey, king, just so you know, your little precious boy, Daniel, he was praying to God. And you said, your law said that anybody who does that, they have to be thrown into the lion's den. Well, that's some serious opposition. And the king was kind of put in this rock and a hard spot where he liked Daniel. He didn't want to see anything happen. He wanted to find a loophole, but at the end of the day, he couldn't. So the day came where Daniel was literally thrown into the lion's den. So after the king gave the order for Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den, he said this, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." Now, I don't know about you, but that's kind of a long shot, you know? So the king actually did something crazy and really out of the ordinary. He fasted all night, and then the next morning he got up, he ran to the lion's den, and he called out to Daniel. This is what it says in verse 20 through 23. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done anything wrong before you, your majesty." The king gave the orders to lift Daniel out, and what happened next was he declared that the God of heaven, the God that Daniel served, was to be the God that everyone would serve. Now, I know that opposition is tough. I know that nobody wants to go through opposition. But had Daniel not gone through that opposition, the whole kingdom would have been a different place. The fact that Daniel let God do that, the fact that he gave God the full reign, the full control to do what he wanted, not necessarily what Daniel wanted, but what God wanted, it allowed for an entire kingdom to look different. You know, when I look at that story of Daniel, I think there's several things that you could probably pick out. On the petty side, you could pick out that it's really, really cool that God shut the mouth of the lion. And you would be absolutely right. That's a really, really cool part of the story. And forever in his life, he could literally say that the people who wanted him to die, they didn't win. There's a lot of different things you could pick out that are cool, but it's not actually what Daniel accomplished in this story. For me, when I look at what Daniel actually went through, the opposition that he went through, the biggest win was that he stayed faithful. I mean, how many of us can actually say that in all of the opposition that we face, that we stayed faithful? Like it wasn't about what we went through. Our mind was just solely focused on what is God doing through this? You know, in the United States of America, I love this country, but at the same time, it'll give you kind of some false belief systems to live with. You know, this country was founded upon religious freedoms, and you kind of have this right to happiness and this right to a good life, and we're all supposed to be going after this American dream, and that's okay. If you want to have a nice house one day with a great spouse and kids, cool, go for it. But all of that is going to come with some opposition. What other countries know, and I think what America needs to realize, especially teenagers and also adults, but that the life that we're supposed to live is not one of perfection and not one where we never have to go through anything. Honestly, that would be a boring life. I don't think you would get to know God very well. The life that we're supposed to live is a life of opposition. See, what Christians are about is not what the world's about. So naturally, when we believe in our faith, we're going to have opposition. The people in the Bible knew this. people like Elijah and people like Daniel, all the prophets, all the people in the New Testament, the disciples, the apostles, the people who were part of the early church, they knew that opposition was just a part of the game. And because they knew that it was just a part of the story that they were going to have to live, they didn't cower in fear every single time something went wrong. They also didn't freak out like life was about to go down the tubes because something bad was happening. What they knew, and what I feel like we as Christians in this generation need to wise up to, is that opposition is one of the greatest ways that God can show Himself. Opposition isn't this diss on you like you're bad or your life isn't as good as someone else. No, opposition is honestly, in my opinion, one of the biggest compliments that God can give you. He's saying, yes, you can handle the opposition. Yes, you are willing to get through it with me. Yes, I have chosen this person to show how good and how great I can be through them. So how do you view opposition? Is it something that you hope never happens in your life? Is it something that you, like whenever it happens, you like brace for it and you're like, okay, just get through it, just get through it, just get through it, just get through it. I don't know how to do it, but just get through it, just get through it. Can anybody help me? And you freak out. Or are you a person that when opposition comes your way, you kind of get a little excited? Because the bottom line for today is that the greater the opposition against you, the greater the opportunity for God to fight for you. I can guarantee you that if you were to talk to Corrie ten Boom, or if you were to talk to Daniel, or I hope one day in heaven that we get to talk to all the crazy, crazy, crazy cool characters in the Bible about what they experienced and what God actually did for them, I think they would say the opposition was completely worth it. And had they not gone through that opposition, they probably wouldn't have known God in the same way. I think if Jesus could speak to you guys right now, I think what He would say is opposition is not God being cruel to you. It really isn't. These are opportunities for Him to show off. When I was growing up, I grew up in the Nazarene church, and my parents were like super traditional. We went to Sunday school in the kids area, and then we came to big church, as we call it at Westside, and we sat in the adult service with our parents every single Sunday. Well, I'm kind of used to like zoning out at this point, and I don't really understand the messages. I don't really think they're for me. I'm just doing what I'm told. I'm sitting down, I'm being quiet. Well, I was in middle school, and the pastor, his name was L.D. Holmes, I still remember this, and he started this message off, and he counseled a lot of people in the church, and he was really, really involved with just the people's lives. He knew what was going on. He knew how the congregation was doing. He was invested in them personally. So he had this message, and I don't really necessarily know or remember a lot of the message, but I remember at one point in the message, he said, a lot of people when they come in my office, they talk about how awful their life is, and they talk about how much they're going through and how they wish that they just didn't have to go through all of this. And Pastor Holmes, he said, for a while I was super compassionate and I would just kind of sit in the pit with them. But then he said he started asking a different question. And he asked this question to the church on a Sunday. He said, what if you guys took your question of why me and you changed it to why not me? Like, why not go through the scenario so you can see God in His full potential? I mean, not that we want bad things to happen, not that we want to author our own bad things to happen, but it's kind of like Job. I mean, he was picked for the opposition. And what God was able to do through that was insane. It was so cool. We're still learning about the way the Bible characters went through their opposition and the lessons that they learned. We are literally learning about God through those things. And I don't know what you're facing. Maybe you have a lot of opposition right now. Maybe your family is a train wreck that you're just continually watching every single day. I mean, maybe you are literally ostracized in your family because of your faith. I mean, I know there are students right now in our ministry that their family doesn't think that the faith that they believe in is correct. So they say, go do your thing, but we're not touching that. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to be a part of it. I mean, maybe that's your opposition, or maybe you just have friend groups that are really not helpful to your faith at all. You know, they kind of make fun of you for being the Jesus person. They kind of, oppose the stories that you feel like God has for you. Maybe you've come back from a mission trip and you talked about all these crazy miracles that happened, all these cool things that you saw God do and God tell you, and they're like, yeah, that's probably not real. I mean, I know for me, that literally happened in my family. Some of the stories that I tell my family, they don't even believe. So what do you do with the opposition? I mean, I hope after this you recognize that opposition is something that can be to your advantage, not to your disadvantage. And actually, opposition in some ways, as long as it's not authored by you, opposition in some ways can be one of the best compliments, because God is choosing you to go through something so that He can show off through you. And here's the caveat, if you let Him. So what if we were the people that just let Him? What if we gave up all of our comforts and all of what we think life should be, and everything that our picture-perfect American dream life can possibly look like? And we changed our prayer and said, why not me? God, use me for the hard stuff. Use me for the stuff that nobody else wants to do. I want to see you show off. I want my community around me to be better because of something that you're going to show through me. I think we'd be one of the boldest people in our community if we would just say that to God. And let me leave you with this. In Ephesians 6, it's kind of the infamous passage about the armor of God. But there's a part of this passage that I really love, and I want to leave you with this one last encouragement. In Ephesians 6:13, it says this, "Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand." In a different version, it says, when you've done everything already, stand. That's my last encouragement to you. I know that opposition is awful. I know it's not fun. I know it's not something that anyone necessarily wants to go through. But if you're going to go through it, which we're promised, you're going to have opposition. Jesus promises it in Scripture. If you're going to have to go through it, what do? Well, you don't cower. You don't cry about it. You don't whine about it. You don't ask, why me? You stand up. You put on the armor of God that God has already given to you. And you say, why not me? God, I want you to do something significant through me. And if it's opposition, that's the highway that you choose for that to go for, I'm ready.
Prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. No, my God will never fail. 'Cause I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory, for the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory, for the battle
gonna turn it for good. Hallelujah. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy